Shelley, if you can take the roll, please.
Member Anderson,
Here.
member Frew,
Here.
member Hart,
Here.
member Hetrick,
Here.
Chair Geisel.
Here. So before we get going, I don't want to forget, I want to thank Shelley for everything that she's done for us. She's going to be moving to another town to work with them. So we'll be sad to see her go, but we just want to make sure that we thank her for everything she's done. And not for yelling at us for taking orange folders back in the day. So, thank you. And let's see, tonight we have the planning board with us as well, so we'll get into that. But I think first we will approve our minutes from the last meeting. If we approve them. Any questions, concerns, changes?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Member Anderson,
Yes.
member Frew,
Aye.
member Hart,
Aye.
member Hetrick,
Aye.
Chair Geisel.
Aye. The first thing we have is a tabled application. And I just want to make sure that I do this right, because I've never reopened a tabled application. So do I just make a motion to
Yep, that's
reopen the
almost
public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to reopen the public hearing for application 2022-01Z by the Rochester Genesee Valley Railroad Museum. Second.
Second.
Member Anderson,
Yes.
member Frew,
Aye.
member Hart,
Aye.
member Hetrick,
Aye.
Chair Geisel.
Aye. So last month we looked at this and there was some question about because they don't own the property and the town does, what the issues were there. And Robert looked into that. So I don't know, Robert, if you can share with
Yes,
us.
absolutely. So it was brought to our attention at the last public hearing that the proposed location of the shed is on town property. I did review the license agreement. The Railroad Museum has a license agreement with the town. The license agreement does permit the licensee, the railroad company, our company, the Railroad Museum, to make minor improvements of a temporary or removable nature, which this shed would fall under. It is important to note that if it was not a temporary or removable structure, we would have a different issue on our hands. And certainly the Railroad Museum would be applying for approval from the town and the town highway superintendent. But because this is a minor improvement, temporary removable, they may do this pursuant to license agreement. And so there's no issue in terms of continuing forward on this particular variance application. They still do need a variance because it is within the setback requirements of the front setback requirements.
Any questions?
Questions? I think we had, the only thing we wanted to note that, let's see, in the third, might be within the side setback requirements. So we just recommend that the Railroad Museum just double check with the building inspector to see if it's within those limits. So, but that's it. But that has nothing to do with us now because there's nothing in front of us. So.
So whereas the zoning board of appeals of the town of Rush has examined application 2022-01Z as in Zulu, submitted by Jeremy Tuke of the Rochester and Genesee Railroad Valley Railroad Museum, the applicant, 282 Rush Scottsville Road, Rush, New York, 14543, which is now the property, which is located in the R30 district, requesting a front setback variance from a front setback requirement for structures on a state or county road of at least 110 feet, as set forth in 120-18 of zoning law of the town of Rush, with the placement of a shed 73 feet from the center line. And whereas the zoning board of appeals has examined the application maps and other materials submitted with the application, and whereas a public hearing of this application was held on June 16th, 2022, and once again this evening. A notice was posted as required by law, and whereas all persons at the hearing desiring to speak on the matter were heard, all correspondence was read, and no statements were considered by this board. Now therefore be it resolved that the zoning board of appeals determined that this is a type 2 action exempt from seeker review pursuant to section 618.5C 16 of Title 6 of the New York State Rules and Regulations, which includes granting of individual setback and lot line variances and adjustments. And it is further resolved that pursuant to the criteria set forth under 267-B of the town law and 120-18 of the town law, the zoning board of appeals determines that the applicant is entitled to a variance based upon the following. Number one, there is no undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. No construction is proposed by the applicant as part of the application other than the placement of the proposed shed. Number two, the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue. Number three, the requested area variance is not substantial. The front setback variance is 110 feet from the center line, or ordinance, I'm sorry, from the center line of the road. The actual shed placement is proposed to be 73 feet from the center line of the road, resulting in a 37-foot deviation, which is a 33.6% deviation. The variance will therefore result in a very minor deviation from the requirements of the zoning law. Number four, the required setback variance will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. The variance will not result in any impact of environmental conditions such as drainage, traffic circulation, sight distance, noise, or other impacts. Five, the requested front setback variance for the shed was self-created to preserve handicap parking. In consideration of the other four factors, the benefit to the applicant in granting the variance outweighs the possible detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. And it is further resolved that taking into consideration the five factors, the zoning board of appeals finds that the benefit to the applicant outweighs any detriment to the neighborhood or community. And the variance requested in the application would be granted in order to preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. It is further resolved that application 2022-01 Z as in Zulu is granted as submitted. Second.
Member Anderson,
Yes.
member Frew,
Aye.
member Hart,
Aye.
member Hetrick,
Aye.
Chair Geisel.
Aye. We have to do a motion to close it, or are we all done?
No, we're good.
Perfect, okay. Thank you. So now I think we're open for our discussion. We have a joint workshop with the planning board members. I think we're gonna do the adjournment after I have here. Do we want to close our meeting and then
No, if the board's going to be meeting
we have
as
to?
five, you have to have it
Yeah.
as an open meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, the planning board's essentially, planning board members are essentially members of the public at this point.
Yeah.
So they're allowed to sit with you and be with you because you're allowing them to.
Yes. You're
So
right.
if you decide you want them to sit in the general matter there.
Just like restart.
Nope, I thought about it too.
Yeah, you're. When they print it out. I'll be sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I got that. All right, we'll fix it.
Thanks for joining us. I appreciate the flexibility. So I wanted to make sure that we were available. You guys were the flexible ones. We didn't do anything. When did they come to us?
Orders there. And John Lindbeck. I asked them to unmute. No. All right. And Scott, if you want to share, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah. Do that. Let's see, let me get back. So you're gonna have to authorize me or something. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Is the owl gonna be able to handle this, spinning all the way around? That's why they call it an owl, I guess, right? Because it's not going all the way around.
That's why I hate talking.
It should be now. You should be able to now. Can you?
Yeah.
And do we all know each other? I mean, I kind of met you, Julie, Steve, but I don't think I've met you in person, so.
We should probably introduce
Probably
ourselves.
yeah.
I think.
Rich. Yep. Rich
Steve,
Anderson.
nice to seen Lee before. Lori, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
John, nice to meet you. Rick Hart. Rick, nice to meet you.
Okay, you want me to start?
Sure.
Which,
Do we know Carl? Everybody knows Carl. and-
which one we're gonna do first?
The
lot thing?
flag
Yeah.
lots. So the folks who are not facing the screen will probably want to turn their chairs. I'm Scott Strock. I've been on the planning board about 15 years, but just became the chair this past year. And part of my agreement was that we were to be authorized to work on some of the problem areas that we saw as a planning board in the town code. It doesn't mean we have any authorization to change anything, but we are authorized to make suggestions and recommendations to the town board. And that's what I'm headed to here for flag lots. Let's see. Why isn't my screen isn't showing up? I have it in the mode where it fills the screen, and that's not. Why is that?
I don't know.
That's bizarre.
I mean, we can see it, so. I don't know if it-
So that's what I have. That's what my screen looks like now. So if we go to slideshow, from current slide, that doesn't change.
It doesn't look like your screen is being shared.
It says that I'm viewing Scott Strock's screen. Do I need to do something different?
You are screen
Do you think
sharing.
if I make him the host, it'll work
Yeah.
instead of the co-host?
Yeah.
All right, so let me do that, Scott.
I'm not sure how that
Make host.
Yeah. Over last time we were showing.
Right.
Yeah, but it's on his screen is full, and it's not.
Well, as long as it moves through, I mean.
Yeah,
we
but
can
it's
see
a
it.
shame. There's going to be ones that are much harder to read than
I
this.
can see that distance there.
Yeah,
Can't
I
see.
know.
Right, yeah, so I can't. I think it's okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can see it. That's fine.
Well, wait a
Well,
minute
fine.
here.
That's good.
As
That's
long
good.
as you can
Yeah.
see it.
There you go. There, hooray.
Better.
That's confusing. Let me just see if, yeah, it's not, that's moving. Okay.
Us down.
Okay. We all have experience with flag lots several times a year typically, or sometimes at least several times a year. an applicant will come to us, to the planning board, with something that we can't approve because the lot they're requesting in the subdivision does not conform. And we'll talk about exactly what the definition of flag lot is and why it's not conforming in a bit. But flag lots in Rush are fairly common. You probably know that better than me. But you notice that this lot here is a flag lot. So it has a pole, right, which is the access corridor down here. And then it's got the main portion to the rear of the road and the frontage lots, and that's the appearance of a flag with a flagpole and a flag, and that's why it's called a flag lot. This lot, I would assume, I'm pretty sure, is not a flag lot because it has the required width up here, and in fact, the house is way down here. So it looks like a flag, but it's not a flag lot because it's not a narrow access corridor. It actually has the width needed, and we'll talk about exactly what that is. We'll talk about the flag lot definition, why flag lots are used by developers, what the current code says and the intent of prior town boards in several locations in the town code, benchmarking how other towns handle flag lots. And again, the details of the proposed code update, comparison to the current code and specifics, and explanations and comments about those specific parts of the proposal. And then, of course, last is a discussion and the path forward. I know you folks looked at the proposal at a prior meeting, and one of the comments from that April meeting in the meeting notes was the proposal seems restrictive and does not have the safety or welfare of the residents in mind. This seems like an attempt to stop development within the town of Rush. So I think this statement nicely gets at the heart of the issues, which are the proposal is restrictive compared to the town code. Is it or is it not? The proposal harms the safety and welfare of the residents. Does it or does it not? The reason for the proposal is personal opinion about development. So keep these three parts in mind throughout the presentation. I'll return to them and near the end of the presentation. This gets at the specific definition of a flag lot. This comes from John Mancuso, the prior town attorney, in January 2019, where he was looking at a specific couple of lots that were in question. I think it turned out those lots were not flag lots. I won't talk about any of the details in this little drawing, but he does show the access corridor here, and he shows the front setback. I should say the lot width at the minimum front setback. So don't worry about that, but this is what it boils down to. A flag lot is a non-conforming lot which has a width less than the minimum lot width, which is 150 feet for R30, 100 feet for R20, as shown in section 120-17, at the minimum front setback, which is 110 feet on state and county roads and 100 feet on all other roads, according to section 120-18. So all lots must meet frontage width requirements, which is 50 feet in the town of Rush. And the lot width can be less than the minimum width between the road and the minimum front setback and still be conforming. And that's why pie-shaped cul-de-sac lots can be conforming. So you're not non-conforming until the width is less than the minimum at the minimum front setback. So why are flag lots used? Well, I'll first talk about where they're not used. Flag lots are not used by developers of major residential tracts. This is one of the alternatives for the Foster Brooks property. This left side here being the town line between Henrietta and Rush. And of course, they want to bring sewers in and I believe have even more dense development in a smaller area using patio homes. But this is their alternative with conventional lots. And you notice that they don't use flag lots in major developments. They use dedicated public roads with cul-de-sacs to use up the total land area. You notice that in this example, which is typical of large developments, there is no frontage lots. So there are no driveways fronting, in this case, East Henrietta Road. The only road that comes out is this public road that connects to the internal roads. So I suspect that larger towns with more and larger tracts such as these do not need or allow flag lots, or at least they do not do so commonly. So why are flag lots used? This is an example. This is actually just east of the hamlet on 251 on Rushmenden Road. The hamlet would be over to the left, and you can see the development there along the main road. Frontage lots are sold off by developers of small residential tracts in less developed towns so that they can avoid the costs and time required to build roads, thereby quickly profiting from selling off and or developing those frontage lots. Note that the access corridors between the frontage lots are typically saved for future roads or for flag lot use as a part of remaining lands. In fact, remaining lands cannot be landlocked according to the code, so access corridors of some sort must be provided. Remaining lands lot can also be a conforming lot that has a larger access width elsewhere. Perhaps there was one that we couldn't see on the picture I just showed. Remaining lands, however, are eventually re-subdivided either using roads for multiple residences or single residence driveways for flag lots. So this is, of course, the remaining lands, and there are two access corridors. Conceivably, this could be split and have two houses back here, each with a driveway and a flag lot, or the developer could build roads from either of these or a U-shaped one coming to both of them and have more lots in the back there. This gets at some of the neighborhood impacts of flag lots. This is on Honeyway Falls 5 Points Road, just east of Works Road. In fact, this is my lot up here in the corner that fronts on Works Road, and this is that's where my residence is, and this is a lot we own next door. So my property looks back on these, and in fact, in half of the year I can't see any of them, and the other half is no problem. But this is a pretty extreme example of flag lots. First, I'll talk about this barn right here. This lot was, the lot line was changed, I believe, prior to this house being built. And this lot line now comes from about this corner and perpendicular to the side lot lines. So it comes something like that. And the person back here who has a very large home built a barn in front of his house. Okay, so that barn appears as if it's behind this house in the frontage lot, but in fact, it's a barn that belongs to this one. So you say, how can you build a barn in front of the main residence? Well, in fact, the code does allow that. The code says currently that an accessory building cannot be closer to the road than the minimum setback, the same as the residence, but it doesn't have to be behind the main residence. So given this is a flag lot, the minimum setback would be somewhere up here, and a barn clearly is behind that and meets the code currently. The other impact here is that this lot, for example, has driveways on both sides of it from flag lots. That house was recently built, and there's a major addition going on now. In fact, there are 3 driveways next to each other here. The one from the frontage lot, this flag lot, and this flag lot. They're just 3 driveways right in a row. So I'm going to compare that to compare those added driveways to section A12521, construction of roads and streets, J, highway frontage. And that section, A12521, says, number 1, to promote and protect the public health, safety, and welfare, it shall be the policy of the town planning board to control the number of entrances and exits onto and off from state, county, and town highways. This policy is adopted toward the end that safer highways shall result, more cohesive neighborhoods be developed, and abutting property owners shall not be unduly unnecessarily inconvenienced in the future when it becomes necessary to widen highways to accommodate greater traffic flows. I don't think we have a lot of highway widening going on in Rush, but I think that everything else applies. To implement the policy described in subsection J of this statement of the policy, so that's up here, J1, The town planning board shall, from time to time, as part of the process of maps, plots, plats, or plans, require that the applicant grant to the town of Rush such easements as are required to provide access to contiguous properties onto a public highway via frontage or service roads, common driveway, or such other roadways as are required, so that the number of entrances and exits onto and off from state, county, and town highways are not increased. This law actually goes back to 1988 or probably even earlier than that. So I can't recall ever seeing the use of or consideration of frontage or service roads in Rush, and I'll show you what those are. Although Park Lane, right across the street here, the south of Montesanos, to beyond the bend of 15A in the hamlet is an example. There's a better example of a frontage road in Mendon, west and north of Saxby Assembly Corporation. So this comes from the Monroe County mapping system. This is 15A. Of course, we are right in here. And this is, what do they call it? The Commons, but this essentially is a frontage road. So these homes and actually the business Montesanos don't have access directly to 15A. They have to use this frontage road, which is Park Lane, to get to 15A. So that's an example of frontage road, although I don't know its history. I don't know how it got there. This is a better example, and it's in Mendon. There are 9 houses along here which front on Victor Mendon Road, 251. This is 9 mile square road. And if you go back here a little bit further and turn right, it goes past Tom Golisano's summer home. You probably know where that is. But these 9 homes, and Carl, you said you know this person who lives in number 8, right? Yeah. So you've been there. There is an access to these 9 homes right here, which is very hard to see, but there is a frontage road which runs right along here under these trees, parallel and very close to Victor Mendon Road, 251. So all of these homes access their driveways via this frontage road, which has a single access point. That road, if you go down there and look at it, it's pretty obvious. It's a very nice neighborhood drive, and that if the kids wanted to ride bikes on it and that sort of thing, it's very, very, very neighborhood-like and very helpful, I think, to raising a family compared to direct access to Victor Mendon Road, which is quite busy. So the other comment made in that section A12521 was around common driveways. So in Rush, common driveways tend to be driven by residents' proximity. I've seen examples where the same owner owns 2 adjacent houses and the driveways were in common, and when they're split, one gives an easement to the other so that they can keep the driveway the same without changing it. It tends to be driven by that type of thing rather than the intent to reduce road access points. However, there are examples of common shared driveways in Rush. I'll show you those on East Henrietta Road, just north of here, but south of Leary School and the Welcome to Rush sign. There's a series of 6 lots. 2 lots each have common driveways. Now later I'll talk about Pheasant Run off of Pinnacle. That serves 13 lots, but it's more like a private road. So this is the common driveway example on East Henrietta Road, just north of here. These 2 houses have driveways which come out to the same point. These 2 houses have driveways which come out to the same point. These 2 houses have driveways which come out to the same point. That is not a coincidence. So whenever this was developed, they were looking at, my belief is that section 8125 and trying to reduce the number of entrances and exits or driveways onto East Henrietta Road. This is a common driveway or private road example, Pheasant Run off of Pinnacle. This came before both of our boards last year. This is Pinnacle Road here. This is Pheasant Run. These lots that don't show buildings indeed are unbuilt. There's only frontage lots here. These 2 houses that are on either side of Pheasant Run indeed do use Pheasant Run. So their driveways come out to Pheasant Run, not to Pinnacle. The pheasant run off of Pinnacle is an interesting case. I don't know how it came about. I know Steve investigated that, and there's a history there of apparently being approved but never coming to the town board for dedication of a highway or a public road or something like that. But anyway, it was allowed or approved by the planning board long ago, before anybody I ever knew was on a planning board. The driveway area was originally owned by the primary landowner of the unsold lots. Right, so the person who was selling the lots had ownership of that land, which is now Pheasant Run. The implementation was poor. None of the common driveways were ever paved, or I should say, none of Pheasant Run was ever paved, and only the 2 frontage lots actually use it. Now it's owned, as a result of what happened last year, it's owned by one resident with easements to those other 13 lots after the 2021 re-subdivision. So this is kind of the summary of the current code and the intent of prior town boards as indicated by the definition of flag lots and the fact that they are non-conforming. The writers and approvers of the current town code, meaning prior town boards, did not want flag lots. Fewer driveways and not more flag lots are stated to promote and protect the public health, safety, and welfare, as it specifically states in A21, A12521, constructions of roads and streets, J highway frontage. The intent to prevent flag lots was confirmed in 2014 with the approval by the town board at that time of local law 1 of 2014. It was intended to be new code section A125-60, private roads, and that includes design specifications and site development detail number 13 for private road section, non-dedicated right-of-way, and the zoning appendix. So the purpose of this new code section, and the reason I put new in quotation marks, is it was approved in 2014. It's a valid law, but it has not as yet been added to the town code in its proper spot. It got lost in 2014 with all of the design specifications that were added at that time. So we're still waiting for that to get put in its proper spot. But it will be an A125-60, and its purpose was to provide an alternative to flag lots and comply with section A125-21J highway frontage. If you want to find this private road law, you have to look under legislation. It's in E-code, but it's not in the town code. It's under legislation, which is that list of boxes on the upper left you can click on. So the intent was to provide an alternative to flag lots that did not require the high developer cost of a public road and did not require the town highway department to maintain a public road for just a few residents. And that includes, blacktopping, maintaining, snow plowing, the whole thing. So the highway department really doesn't want to maintain roads for just a few residents. But the features of that law, or it applies to 2 to 4 lots. It's set up by the developer, but the land is owned by one resident with shared easement and shared maintenance costs for the other resident users. This is the design specification. It shows each side of the road is 9 feet wide with a 3-foot shoulder. So the total requirement is 40 feet for that private road, 40 feet width. That's an A125A Appendix A, along with all the other road specifications. So, given that flag lots are non-conforming with basic town code and inconsistent with highway frontage rules and inconsistent with availability of other options, such as private and public roads, what is our justification for past and ongoing approvals of multiple and/or concentrated flag lots? Isn't the town code supposed to provide our guiding principles and even requirements that we must adhere to? We're going to benchmark with other towns. We're not the only people who have concerns about flag lots. Flag lot code sections are common in less developed towns, and essentially all those provide substantial guidance and conditions. Riga, with a population of 5,600, is actually the best example, and much of the proposal that we have is based on Riga. And Wheatland, population 4,800, are good nearby benchmarks in Monroe County. The Rush population is a bit less. I will add that Riga and Wheatland are not real sophisticated, expensive towns. If you look at the Saturday or Sunday pamphlet that shows real estate, their average house values are typically quite a bit below Rush, even though the population is a bit bigger. So this is from Riga's flag lot code. their section 9572, which was amended in April of 1998. And here's some excerpts from it. Flag lots are approved by the planning board, not the zoning board of appeals. It states that no more conventional approach to the creation of the lot is reasonable. The minimum area of the interior portion of the lot, exclusive of the access way, shall be 3 acres. Our proposal says 2 acres. The access way width shall be 66 feet, and the uniform width shall not exceed 1,000 feet in length, nor be less than 200 feet. So I will talk about why those proposals are that way. I will say that we had a flag lot that almost met the 1,000-foot limit. It was about 900 some feet. I think that's the Burrell subdivision that was on Honeyway Falls number 6 road. It actually went in almost 900 feet and made a 90-degree left turn to get to the back acreage that was being sold off. Riga flag lot law goes on to say no access way shall be closer to another access way to a flag lot than 500 feet. I will go into some reasoning for these as I get into our specific proposal. No structures of any type shall be erected on the access way. All access ways shall be designed to permit adequate access for fire and rescue equipment. Pretty basic. The planning board shall require the siting of any structures on the interior lot in such manner as will assure the privacy of adjacent properties and shall require such plantings, screenings, or berms as may be necessary to protect such privacy at the time of construction and thereafter. This is Wheatland, which is not as extensive, but they say the use of a flag lot represents the only method of developing the site. If direct frontage access to a parcel or portion of a parcel can be provided by an existing or new public or private road, a flag lot shall not be proposed. The access strip serving any permitted flag lot shall not exceed 300 feet in length. That seems unduly restrictive. I would think a lot of flag lots would be over 300 feet. So just some general comments about other benchmarks. There are towns that are more lenient with flag lots, but they typically restrict the number of flag lots that are allowed. Often they set a maximum of 10% of lots. They specify that in their code. The problem with that type of limit, it's difficult to define. So which lots constitute the total? This particular subdivision or re-subdivision, that's before the board at the time. What about prior or nearby subdivisions or the original subdivision of a re-subdivision? And how is that percentage rounded up or down when you have relatively small subdivisions? 10% of 4 would be 0. And if your policy is to round down, even 10% of 9 lots could be 0 flag lots allowed. So this starts to get at why our proposal. Despite the large number of existing flag lots in Rush, a common request for a flag lot is from a resident landowner with a large lot who wants to sell off the quote, back 40 acres as a way to fund their life or retirement. The most common request for a flag lot has been a very small subdivision that creates a single flag lot. That now requires an extra ZBA step for an area variance, which often adds a month or more for the applicant and could be argued adds no value to the town. Therefore, the proposal allows the planning board to approve a single flag lot with a new subdivision if several conditions are met. Why allow the planning board to approve just one flag lot per subdivision? Well, that's because with proper width of the access corridor, one flag lot serving the back remaining lands has the ability to become conforming simply by the addition of a public or a private road. If the flag lot instead is used for a single residence driveway, the access corridor flag lot arguably can be no more of a concern than if used for a road with several lots. The primary problem, in my opinion, remains multiple and concentrated flag lots and their associated deficiencies, not an isolated flag lot. So at a high level, comparing the current code versus proposed code, current code being over here on the left, the proposed code being on the right. The current code, one flag lot is not allowed without an area variance by the ZBA. In the proposed code, one flag lot per subdivision is allowed as part of routine planning board process if it meets certain conditions. Second, all other flag lot numbers and features are allowed with an area variance. In the proposal, all other flag lot numbers and features are allowed with an area variance. So there is no change there. That's a hard concept to get around, despite everything that's said in this proposal. Anybody can come to the zoning board at any time with any flag lot and require no more variances than they already require, because there's no flag lot that's allowed now. There's no flag lot that's conforming. Third, section 12069B3 gives the planning board wide latitude for site plans. This is independent of flag lots. This is for any site plan, including location and arrangement of the buildings, adequacy, type, and arrangement of trees, shrubs, and other landscaping constituting a buffer between this and adjoining lands, and protection of adjacent properties against noise, glare, unsightliness, or other objectionable features. So the proposal, in addition to 12069B, powers which the planning board already has, the new code section mostly provides an additional listing of similar considerations more specifically suggested for flag lots, but none of which are unique to flag lots. So again, at a high level, current versus proposed code. The proposed code is more lenient than the current code by allowing one flag lot per new subdivision without a variance from the ZBA. No matter what specific considerations are added as requirements for a flag lot in the proposal, that same flag lot situation is not allowed in the current code because all flag lots are non-conforming and require an area variance. In other words, any specific requirements that are seen as hardships can be bypassed using the same area variance that would be needed for the flag lot, regardless in the current code. This is a series of slides now that looks at the proposed specific code wording, and I've indicated those slides with this red dialogue or the dialogue box here. And I'll follow each one with one or more slides that discuss and explain why that section says what it does. So this is a proposed code. A, purpose. The purpose of this section is to control the use of flag lots while allowing some flexibility that can benefit applicants for subdivisions of a few lots. Flag lots are defined as lots for which the lot width at the minimum front setback is less than the required minimum for lot width. Flag lots include a narrow access corridor fronting a public road and a wider main portion further back from the road. Flag lots are used as a means for a landowner to develop the interior of a parcel, which avoids the need for the parcel owner to fund building a road. Flag lots are otherwise undesirable compared to shared roads because they increase the area of impervious pavement and increase the number of driveway access points on public roads. They create driveways to the side of other residences on nearby lots fronting the same road, and they create awkward placement of residents behind those frontage lots. We already talked about this example on Honeyway Falls 5 Points, which is a pretty extreme one. This is addressing my comment about awkward house placement. If you look at this slide here, there's a beautiful yellow two-story sitting back from Monroe Street. So this is the extension of Honeyway Falls 5 Points as you cross East Henrietta Road. And if you look off to the left as you get down a little ways before you hit Honeyway Falls, you'll see this very large two-story sitting back there. It's got a house over here, a bunch of yellow barns over here. What's striking about it is it's a flag lot. It sits back between these older residences, which were probably there for 40, 50 years before that big, beautiful house was built behind them. So, you know, I didn't stop and ask the opinion of the people in the frontage lots, what they thought of it. It's a very nice house. Maybe they like it. Maybe it increases the value of their homes because it's so big and nice behind them. But it's a very strange placement with houses.
I think one of the neighbors just sold.
Oh, yeah.
That house in the picture is
Oh, be
up for
darn.
sale. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm wondering if that's the old railroad. Probably also.
Yeah, could be.
No, that's further down.
That's further down.
Yeah.
So if you drive down Monroe Street, look off to the left, particularly in winter when there's not so much vegetation, you'll see that big yellow house back there. This is a section of the code proposed per code wording again. B, flag lot creation, notwithstanding section 100-16, prevention of landlocked parcels. If direct frontage access to a parcel or a portion of a parcel can be provided by an existing or new public or private road, use of a flag lot as a means of avoiding such road access shall be discouraged by the planning board. However, if the planning board determines that a flag lot is appropriate use of land, the planning board may approve a subdivision with a flag lot within residential districts, subject to the following conditions. So this is the explanation. The phrase "shall be discouraged by the planning board." Yes, that is intended to mean what it says. It's fully consistent with the current code, which does not allow any flag lots without a variance for valid reasons. But again, the proposal is more flexible by allowing the planning board to approve one flag lot for subdivision with the conditions, restrictions on that ability, and I'll mention more of those later. Back to the code wording. There's, this is a one, I'm not sure what it is. There shall be no more than one flag lot created as part of any subdivision or re-subdivision, notwithstanding, again, remember, these rules are all aimed at what the planning board can do, because the planning board can only do what's in the town code. There should be no more than one flag lot created as part of any subdivision or re-subdivision, notwithstanding section 100-6 preliminary plat review, B 13 and 18. The flag lot shall also be labeled on the subdivision as flag lot requires a road for subdivision. Any other remaining land shall be labeled remaining lands not approved for building, flag lots not allowed. So this is the section that I referred to here, which says remaining lands have to be labeled remaining lands not approved for building. And the purpose of this remaining lands not approved for building, flag lots not allowed, is that so additional flag lots shall not be approved with later re-subdivision of the same parcel or parcels. A previously approved flag lot may be modified with a later re-subdivision so long as no additional flag lots are created and all other requirements are met. So we're not trying to say that once a flag lot's created, it can't be modified so long as they aren't creating new ones. Because
Not true, you can currently do that on the planning board, say remaining lands not approved for building.
typically if a person comes in and wants to section off a single lot out of a farm, right, the remaining lands, which is everything else but that single lot, the code says it should be labeled remaining lands not approved for building.
How is this different?
It only calls out the reference to flag lot. So
Okay.
if it is a flag lot, it should be labeled as flag lot requires a road for subdivision, right? If you're not going to further subdivide it, you don't need a road, you just need a driveway. And at that point, it would be a valid lot approved by the planning board rather than the zoning board. But the other remaining lands would be labeled not approved for building because that subdivision already got its proposed one flag lot. So the next slide is important. Only one flag lot per subdivision, and the reason for that is 2 to 4 rear lots can usually be handled with a private road that otherwise may have been a flag lot, or if there's more than 4, it could be a public road. Subdivision labeling requirement is to forewarn the landowner and prevent future re-subdivisions from each adding another flag lot. You know the way this would go. Somebody would come in with a subdivision, create a flag lot. They'd come back in a few years later, create another, re-subdivide that, create another flag lot, and it would just keep going. So I mentioned that labeling may help, but is not fail-safe if the prior subdivision plat is not viewed at the time of the subsequent re-subdivision. There's nothing that makes it impossible to get approval other than looking at that label. It's just an attempt to make it harder to create multiple flag lots from the same subdivision. So this is back to the proposed code wording again. The flag lot shall have frontage on a public road. A flag lot access corridor shall be no closer than 500 feet to another flag lot access corridor as measured along the public road. Again, this would refer to something that the planning board could approve. And the reason for that is that frontage on public road, private roads are meant to be an alternative to flag lots and not a way to add even more flag lots. So we're suggesting
But
that
that would be on one side of the road, correct, Scott? Because the other side of the road would be a separate entity.
a public road,
No, when you're saying the flag lots can't be, the access of 500 feet apart
yes.
is only on one side of the
Good
road.
point,
The other
yes.
side of the road, okay.
Yeah, I think that's what it says. Let me
I
see.
think that's what it means, but I don't know if that's what it says.
Measured along the, well, that's a good point. When I wrote it, I assumed that was the case, that it was on the same side. This does seem possible to interpret differently. So we could say that, or at least we ought to consider it. Yeah, it makes sense to me to say it's on one side of the road. Because I think what you want to prevent is a house having flag lot driveways on both sides of it. And you don't want multiple flag lot roads, as we showed in that example, 3 driveways next to each other where everybody could be trying to leave coincidentally at one time, or snow plows could be coming out all the
Anything
same
that's
time.
left to interpretation,
Right.
you know, it goes the other way.
That's a good addition. Okay, so the explanation is frontage on a public road. They're meant to be alternative flag lots, not a way to add even more flag lots. The 500-foot minimum to another flag lot is meant to prevent excessive flag lot driveways where some already exist, consistent with the intent of A12521. I think that's probably good to add on the same side. Back to the specific code wording, the flag lot shall have an access corridor no less than 66 feet wide along its full length. Talk more about that 66 feet and some examples. The main portion of the flag lot shall meet requirements of the zone for minimum width and front, side, and rear setbacks. That almost doesn't belong when you're talking about subdivision, because there is no such thing as a minimum. I should say minimum width, yes, but front, side, and rear setbacks only applies to when you put a building there. I put that in there in addition to minimum width because I want whoever's subdividing to think about the requirements for when they do locate a building there. The area of the main portion of the flag lot shall be at least 50% greater than the minimum lot area in the underlying zoning district, but in no event less than 2 acres. Remember, this is Borregas at 3 acres. No portion of the access corridor may be counted as part of the required lot area. I'll explain those. So this is explanation. The minimum width for an access corridor is specified to allow future roads so that flag lot could be later subdivided. 66 feet is a standard road width, excuse me, of 4 rods, common in other towns and actually independently recommended by our town engineer. I originally had a different proposal which said 50 feet for 10 acres or less and 60 feet for more than 10 acres, trying to figure out how many potential lots could be subdivided out of those sizes. And the town engineer said, just make it 66 feet, which is what the common road width is. But I will note here that, of course, 50 feet road frontage is required for any lot. Other widths may be important for subdivision of existing flag lots using roads. So where existing flag lots exist, you could put a private road in with a minimum width of 40 feet, because that's what the design specifications say. You could put a public road in with a minimum of 60 feet, because that's what the design requirements say. The 66 feet is what's recommended as a standard flag lot pole for the future. The main portion lot size of minimum 2 acres is for the benefit of nearby frontage lots by providing open space. Okay, so I think you don't want the flag lot house being forced closer and not providing some open space for the frontage lots that it's stuck behind. And the comment around at least 50% greater than the minimum lot area is stated in case larger lot districts are designated in the future, such as RR 55, rural residential 5. That RR 5 exists in the code as the minimum 5 acre lot size. However, it doesn't exist in the zoning map. So while the district exists in the code, there is no area in Rush that has that district, but it's there. So in case it's later designated or we change the code later on to something that might have a 2 acre minimum or whatever is done for various reasons, I put that in at least 50% greater than the minimum lot area of the underlying district. Again, just to provide space, open space behind the frontage lots. This gets back to proposed code wording. Number 4, any access corridor serving any flag lot shall be a minimum of 200 feet in length and shall not exceed 1,000 feet in length as measured along the center line of the access corridor from the public road to the main portion of the lot. Width of the access corridor along the full length of the corridor shall be no narrower than the road frontage. The planning board may disallow flag lots with boundaries. Yeah, okay. The planning board may disallow flag lots with boundaries which deviate excessively from straight lines. Again, this could be approved by the ZBA without variance. Lot layout shall be designed so as to avoid jogs and other sudden changes in lot lines. Any corners along the access corridor shall have additional width as a radius or angle to accommodate an appropriate future road. So access corridor length, a minimum of 200 feet is to prevent use of flag lots behind small frontage lots. So in Rush, that would be a pretty small lot. It's only 200 feet deep. And that would allow the flag lot to have a house pretty close to the frontage lot house. So it's general incompatibility of flag lot residences looming over small frontage lots. The maximum 1,000 feet is to prevent very long private drives and prevent flag lots behind another flag lot. There should be some limit. As I mentioned, we had the Burl case, which was about 1,000 feet. And that did have a 90-degree left turn in it. And at that time, we said, well, if you ever want to put a road in, you really ought to cut the angle there. And they did put in a 45-degree angle in that corner, and that should be something that's required rather than based on the goodwill of the applicant. So access corridor corners must allow for curves and future potential roads. I'd rather see straight lines for the flagpole, but it doesn't always work out. I should mention, going back to the width of the access, we said 66 feet would be the new standard. We have been pushing for flag lots to be 60 feet wide on the access corridor, and I'd say most people go along with that. We did have one example on East River Road where we asked for 60 feet and the applicant said, no, I don't want to take up any more. I don't want to take an extra 10 feet from the frontage lot, which he also owned and was trying to sell off. It would have fit easily, but we didn't have any leverage to require that at the time. So it was about, I don't know, 50 some acres in the back that he had only 50 feet of width going to him. Condition number 4, flag lot layout shape. It's really not a new concept. Section 114, which is lot size and arrangement, states, quote, in general, side lot lines should be at right angles or radial to street lines unless a variation from this can be shown to result in a better plan. And I'm going to show you an example, which you probably have already seen. And this was a final subdivision approved in 2021, and I think it was even worse than this early proposal because I think it had more flag lots. This is the Pinnacle Road one. Remember, we talked about Pheasant Run, which is this road down here, just off the picture. But this is close to where the subdivision actually ended up with a whole bunch of neighbors trying to preserve open land and I believe hunting property behind them. And I believe instead of one flag lot driveway here, there actually ended up being 2 side by side. This to me was an embarrassment. I voted for it because it was no way it wasn't going to get approved. But this is pretty incredible, the shapes of those lots that were approved, that were requested and approved there. And there was at least 2 flag lots here with driveways, and Pheasant Run actually was a flag lot because this is all owned by one person coming back here. Well, this goes back to proposed code wording. The planning board may approve site plans for a flag lot. So this goes to the site plan. Now, this is not looking at subdivisions and the creation of a flag lot, but this is for an already approved flag lot. So there could be some things in the already approved flag lot which do not meet what the planning board can approve on its own, but it already exists. So this gives the planning board ability to approve flag lots that don't meet that part of the code. The planning board may approve site plans for a flag lot within residential districts under the following conditions. A single family dwelling is the only type of residence which may be located on a flag lot. The lot being developed is such a shape, size, and configuration that the use of a flag lot is the only method of developing the parcel for a single residence, and access to the parcel of land being developed is such that the use of a flag lot represents the only method of developing the parcel for a single residence. So again, keep in mind, this is an already existing flag lot. If there were a different way of developing it, it wouldn't be a flag lot. So this just is a reminder that this needs to be a flag lot and not be able to be developed somewhere else with a road. The flag lot shall meet requirements of the district for minimum front lot width. The main portion of the flag lot shall meet requirements of the district with respect to minimum lot area and width. So this says the main portion has to meet the requirements of the district with respect to minimum lot width and area and width. So you don't get to count the the flagpole or the access corridor as part of the setback. No portion of the access corridor may be counted as part of the required lot area. So again, I said the minimum was 2 acres. You can't count the access corridor for that. In a really long driveway, a lot of the area could have been the flagpole rather than the flag. So this explanation, it reestablishes that a flag lot must be the only way to develop that specific lot, which is a result of a prior subdivision, establishes basic standard lot requirements with the added expectation that flag lot main portion is treated like a normal frontage lot. You can't build in the front setback of the main portion. It prevents a long access corridor area from being counted for minimum lot sizes. For the same reason, there's a minimum lot size for the main portion to provide open space visible to conforming frontage lots. Back to proposed code wording. A driveway servicing a flag lot shall meet the driveway criteria for a standard driveway as provided in the Rushtown Code Appendix, Chapter A125, Attachment A125A, Appendix A, including adequate access for emergency service. The planning board may require the siting of any structures on the main portion of the lot in such manner as will assure the privacy of adjacent properties and may require such planting, screenings, or berms as may be necessary to protect such privacy at the time of construction or ongoing. Rules for accessory buildings apply to the main portion as with regular frontage lots. No structure of any type shall be erected on the access corridor other than as needed for drainage or driveway purposes. And finally, number 6, all water, electrical, and fuel utilities on flag lots shall be installed underground. Explanation. All these requirements are nothing new, fully consistent with prior planning board responsibility and authority under section 12069B3. The concept of no structure in the access corridor is consistent with existing 12020 accessory buildings. No accessory structure shall be constructed or placed near the highway or lot lines than is permitted for the main structure in the district in which it is to be erected or located. So again, remember, currently in flag lots, theoretically, you could use part of the pole or the access corridor as part of the minimum setback. This says you can't do that and you have to go based on the main portion. That means, for example, this was brought up by one of our members previously, you can't have an accessory structure in the access corridor. And that means you can't have a little protective shelter for your child waiting for the school bus. That's not allowed now either. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but it's not allowed now either in the code. Because that would be having a structure in the minimum setback. Underground utility requirements are also consistent with prior requirements and general notes to be included on all site plans number 10. And quote, all proposed utility services shall be installed underground from the source to the proposed building, but are restated since the access corridor is next to adjacent frontage lots. So if not much is new or restricted, then why have a new code section at all? Well, the purpose is to assist most flag lot applicants with direct planning board approval of a single flag lot. Saves them the time and the expense without apparent disadvantages to the town, especially if the zoning board routinely approves flag lots anyway. Provides focused guidance to the zoning board and the planning board when deliberating on flag lot variances and site plan conditions. Gives you some things to think about. Hope that focused guidance dissuades flag lot applicants and directs them toward preferred conforming lot design options such as private roads and public roads. Makes the town of Rush code adherence a benchmark rather than an efficiency in the area of flag lots. So looking at that proposal, the proposal seems restrictive and does not have the safety or welfare of the residents in mind. This seems like an attempt to stop development within the town of Rush. I believe the opposite is true. The proposal actually is less restrictive by allowing one flag lot per subdivision without a variance. Application with multiple flag lots typically can use a conforming private or public road as an option, or they can apply for a variance just as they would have had to before. This better maintains the residents' safety and welfare than more flag lots does by better adherence to the current code, notably highway access rules and other protections, particularly for the owners of frontage lots in front of the flag lots. So it has nothing to do with personal opinion on town development. It enhances our ability to fulfill our duty to follow the current town code. Following the town code is not an example of exerting opinion. On the other hand, routine approval of extensive flag lot use in violation of the town code when alternatives are available does reflect personal opinion. If a new hardship for developers is created by using a separate code section to make flag lot expectations and requirements that are mostly in the current code, making them more visible, then that's an indication of our prior poor code adherence. It's not a deficiency of the flag lot code proposal. So this is one way of developing a tract, right? You could just stack up flag lots, flag lot after flag lot, and have all the driveways next to each other. At what point do we stop assisting the willful violation of the town code? Well, this is where we get to the hard part. Discussion and agreement, hopefully. I suggest we consider the overall concept. Is a good thing to strive for conformance to the current code? Is it a good thing to provide better applicant service with the planning board ability to approve one flag lot per subdivision under some limited conditions? We can consider specifics such as the numbers that are in there and the wording. One example, one improvement we already made was a 66 feet, simplified the width of the pole. And the 500 feet between flag lots, I think it would be good to say on one side of the road. We'll come back to that previous slide about discussion and hopefully agreement, but this is what will happen later on. If a full agreement is reached, that agreement will be forwarded to the town board. Oh boy, there we go. For their consideration. If partial or even limited agreement or little agreement is reached, proposals with minority and or dissenting views can still be forwarded to the town board for their consideration, kind of like the Supreme Court with minority opinions. An expected step of any updating of the code would be town attorney rewrite and approval, and that would be the second step after our suggestions prior to the town board consideration and hopefully approval as a local law. So comes back to discussion. Is it useful to strive for conformance to the current code and to have a flag lot section?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for that presentation. That was very informative and very thorough. So I learned a lot, that's for sure. So thank you for presenting.
I'd like to say there's only about 5% flag lots in the town now,
Okay,
okay?
that's existing. And
Existing.
does that include any that are
Yes,
approved but not built, or
no,
all built?
well, it depends on what you want to call approved,
Okay,
okay? That slide that you showed, 251 down here.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that it's got 2 60-foot entrances that goes back to 40, okay? Is that considered a flag lot now?
I think it would be if there's nothing off of the picture that has
Well,
a normal
okay,
width. So,
let's just say there's 40
Okay.
acres and 2 60-foot entrances.
yeah, and no other entrances.
Are
And
those-
and there's no way to get to it from the
Two of them,
backside.
one here,
Yep.
one here. Houses in the front.
Yep.
Is that considered a flag lot?
I think it is because there's no entrance that is, meets the lot width, minimum lot width at the minimum.
For those
setback.
lots?
Yeah.
Okay. So if
So
you
it
include,
conceivably could be subdivided into 2 flag lots. But
correct,
I think it would have to be considered a flag lot as is.
but, okay, but there are 80 similar to that. We have them down as low as 3 feet wide, okay, and then 60, all right?
So 60 is fairly typical.
Would be a typical road, all right?
Did you say that
66,
again? So there's 80 that are developed and
there are
existing?
80 lots, just like you showed there. There's a couple flag lots. There's one flag lot that's been
Okay.
developed with 3 foot. Okay.
Basically
with-
farmland that's been sold off,
Yes,
and then the
correct.
access.
But does that include the existing flag lots where people already have houses?
Yes, there's only 12 of those
Only 12
approved flag lots with houses on them.
with,
Okay. What you're
No
also
kidding.
seeing in some of those pictures are either private roads. Okay, we have 3 of them in town. And I'll jump around here a little bit. So anyways, there's
Well, I appreciate this
5%, there's
information.
5% right now. Okay. All of the zoning workshops that I went to and stuff like that. Okay, one of the scenarios was in a town, local town here. They had a request for 30 variances for swimming pools in the backyard. Okay. That constituted them to change their zoning rules saying you could have a pool, okay? Because of the size of it and the land mass, you can only cover so much. They had to apply. So they decided they would change the rules and allow pools, okay? So the question is, if we had 30, 40%, okay, applications, then I would say maybe we need to change some of the rules. I'm not saying that some of them you had up there weren't bad. These corridor entrances are all on state roads. I'm unfamiliar. I don't know of any that are on county or a town road. 251 that you were showing, that's on a state road.
Mhm.
Part of that was because of the distance from the corner. One, it's a state road, it's miles square, and because of those lot lines, they're not 150 feet wide, they're only 120 wide. So with that, okay, that's why they made them put an access road in there. Sight of vision was part of it, and they're on the corner, and it's a state road. You talk about a lot of driveways coming onto a road, okay? I live on Farm Crest. I have a driveway every 75 feet, okay? So what would the standard be for the planning board to say, well, there's too many driveways here or whatever, okay?
Well, the planning board wouldn't say. The planning board would be able to approve one flag lot per subdivision.
Well, we're not even saying
Well,
that, okay?
I would prioritize state roads over county roads, over
Right,
town roads.
And speed,
Yeah.
speed of the road, sight distance, all those
Right.
considerations. for
but
traffic.
any subdivision that is put into play or comes before you is already submitted to either state, county, or town, correct? Does the state, county, and town comment on site plans?
The county does, not the state.
But if it goes on a state road, it will.
Um,
All blueprints that I've ever done and site plans on a state road, I
I've
have
never
to
seen a
have a
comment.
Mylar and a sign.
Yeah, I've never seen a comment from. the
I
state.
suspect that the shared driveways up here on 15A are probably required by the state.
Yes, that's site of vision because of the speed.
Yep.
Okay, so they play a part in it. It's the same way the town can't change a speed limit.
Right, but it's probably inconsistent. We're not getting comments consistent over time. So it depends on who's the traffic engineer at the time or.
Well, there is. It's usually 300 feet on a county road. Okay, you have to have visual sight distance for 300 feet. If you look at West Rush Road on the top, before you break over, go to the highway department, those 2 driveways come out together. They have to because of sight of vision.
Right.
Okay, that's why they.
So they
put 'em
moved,
there.
they moved one as far to the best direction as they could.
Correct.
And it ended up next to the.
It's right on the lot line.
My
Okay,
daughter's like that over in Mendon, at the top of the hill,
Yeah.
down to.
all right. So the corridor
Lemon
roads,
Creek.
they're usually state, usually too close to a corner, whatever, side of vision, your house.
Mhm.
That's why your driveway's where it is.
Mhm.
You couldn't move it any further north because of sight of vision. You have to have that, okay? So if there was a flag lot next to you, or let's say across the street going up the hill, you would have to put those driveways together. Or they close to it, or maybe you couldn't even build there. I don't know. I don't know what the vision is. But my big thing is you showed me a house on Monroe Street. I know where it is. I know the house and I know the people. you talk about putting houses in locations behind houses for a flag lot. Generally, as a rule, there'd be more than 200 feet. They're more than 100, so they're 300 feet before they build a house, typically. Okay, so you're not right in the backyard. I live on Farm Crest. I look out my bathroom window and I can see my neighbor, okay? They see their neighbor across the street. I personally myself, this is only my opinion, I'd much rather look out my back window and see one house than a subdivision. Because if you allow and put a subdivision, like you were saying, like down here at 60 feet, I would much rather see 2 flag lots or 4 on a private road than I would to see a subdivision. Part of the reason they don't build subdivision in town of Russia is because we don't have utilities. We don't have water. We don't have gas. We can do away with septic and we'll put septic in and forget the sewer. But without water and gas, you're limited. Okay. That's why Jack Streeter didn't have a subdivision. Because I don't know why, but they wouldn't allow the water. There was something to do with the water
It
anyways.
was, ended up being too expensive.
All right. Because he couldn't configure the house. But anyways, so that's why people are building flag lots. Okay. They want to be back in. They want to be tucked in. The biggest surprise that people get is when they drop me off and say, I'm gonna have a flag lot back, and they go through the honeysuckle. When I drop the bulldozer off, it's a wake-up call. Okay, simple as that.
Yeah.
All right. But that's why these flag lots, to me, are much better for the town of Rush than these subdivisions. You know, you talk about wanting to make it a 66-foot wide. We have right now, like I said, there was 80 of them, 12 of them been approved, some are already built on, all right? But how does the planning board, if they come with a flag and say, I don't have 66 feet, I need 50.
Did we
Okay,
say go see the ZBA?
you know, right, but I'm just saying, when they come to the zoning board and say, here, okay, we have turned down flag lots. Okay, we turned one down on Telephone Road Extension. And that's only because the lot in the back that the town sold, the guy only had to right away an easement. Okay, and he already acquired that space, all right? But anyways, you know, first off, do we really need a flag lot law? Everything seems to work good. There was a lot up here that they broke 7 acres out of the back. They only had 50 feet that they could afford without getting a variance for the house too. They went back to 7 acres, all right? It's hard for me to come to me as a zoning board member and say, hey, they're telling me I need 66 feet, but this guy just put 4 houses on a private road. He's only got 50 and 3 of them people don't own it. You know, I'm not saying what you've got here is wrong, but
Yeah.
there's too much.
Keep in mind that that's what the planning board could approve, 66 feet with this proposal. It doesn't change what the zoning board can approve. for
Right.
Variance.
That's right. Well, they could with a variance.
Right.
They come to you, okay? But do we trouble them with that? That's why we were discussing this to try and make
They
it
have to
simpler
come
and
to you for a
easier.
variance now.
Pardon me?
They have to come to you for a variance for any flag lot now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So it's just gonna be a double whammy to go to planning and here, if you make that a requirement.
It doesn't.
Only if they.
If I have,
wanna
if
be
I have
below
180 or actually 150 and I have a 200-foot frontage. Okay, I want 1 lot and a flag lot. Do I get 1 variance or 2 variances? I come to the planning board and you're gonna tell me, well, you need a variance for that, okay? So I don't see how it gives the planning board more power.
The planning board only has, planning board's not looking for power. It's
Right.
looking for the ability to serve an
the
applicant who
code
comes with a
says.
single flag
Correct.
lot. And it's under limited conditions where we would be able to approve it.
Right, but then you mark the other non-approvable, okay?
No,
Part of that lot, non-buildable, not approved. If I have a flag lot and an extra 30 acres with a
that would
coming
happen,
in,
that would happen now.
but you're telling me I couldn't have 2 flag lots because I'm within 500 feet of each other.
Yeah, the 500 feet.
You can't do that now.
500 feet.
Well, yes, you can.
No, you can't. You have to have a variance.
Yeah, for the 50 feet,
Well,
not for the
That
2
wouldn't change.
flag lots side by side.
that wouldn't change. You'd
Well,
still
it
be
would
able to
because
approve
you're
it.
only allowing 1 within.
This is what the planning board can approve. The planning board can only approve what's in the town code.
Right.
Robert would,
But right now, if I have 2 flag lots, they're side by side, 2 50-foot entrances
Mhm.
going in. Can you approve it?
no,
Right,
we can't now.
correct. But if you pass this and say you can only have one flag lot, not two, because they're not within 500 feet, because they're within 500 feet, John, now they're coming to the zoning board.
They would have to anyway.
For what?
You can't- we-
Okay, see, I even got 260-foot right of ways going in.
Yeah, that's a flag lot and it's not conforming. It has to go to the zoning board.
Right. What would make it conforming that you wouldn't have to send them to zoning?
We could
then?
only approve one if it was
Well,
66
that's what
feet
I'm
wide.
saying, but right now you can, right now, the zoning board can give that.
Well, the zoning board could
And
under this,
pass two.
with this proposal also.
Right.
Doesn't change that.
So there's a double whammy there.
No,
You
it's
might
not a
better
double
not.
whammy. It's the same single whammy.
Scott, maybe, and I'm just gonna put this a little differently.
Okay, baby.
I thought the purpose of this was to cut down the bureaucracy of things.
Correct.
The purpose was to cut down the bureaucracy. And that in effect, and and I researched Bethlehem and their stuff and a number of other places and places
Bethlehem, is this
in New York.
in New York?
Okay, places I was familiar with in Rensselaer County. And it seemed to me that the goal was to try and kind of have the planning board be able to make these decisions without having to have stuff bumped to the zoning board of appeals. I mean, am I correct or incorrect?
That's a big part of it.
Okay.
Yes.
And I think that maybe the structure of the proposal could, in effect, increase the number of items coming to the zoning
Thank
board of
you.
appeals
Thank you.
rather than decreasing and having it stop with with the
How
planning
can
board.
that be when every flag lot now has to come to the zoning board?
Okay.
Well, but
Well, let me just support that. Down here, we talked about the 40 acres and 2 entrances. If you make them dedicated road and there's houses on either side, if they go to sell their house, 4 of them have to come to the zoning board for variances because they will not meet the setbacks.
You lost me.
A corner lot has to have the setback on both sides.
Okay,
You take like I'll just go Farm Crest.
okay.
That middle road, Farm Crest. The houses on the corner
Yep.
have to meet both setbacks.
Mhm.
One for the town, which is 100,
Okay.
and one for the county. These houses down here with the, they're 60-foot going in, and I
Yep.
put 2 dedicated roads in.
Mhm.
Because if they go to sell their houses, they don't meet current zoning. So they would have to, all 4 of them would have to apply 4 variances to sell their house.
To sell a house?
Correct. If one of these houses, oh, well, I shouldn't say that. If you break a house out of a lot, a farmhouse out of a lot,
I don't think you need a zoning variance to sell a house that exists.
but if it doesn't meet existing codes, then you need a variance.
Not to sell it.
That might be more of a mortgage situation.
Well,
You know,
we had to do that with Jack Moore's house up here because it didn't meet the current setback.
and that was also part of the mortgage consideration for the people who
Correct.
were buying it.
Correct.
So the ZBA, right, is an appellate board, so there has to be some sort of denial of some kind for it to
Right.
get here.
I mean, that
If
house
there is
was
a
built,
denial of some
the house
kind,
was built in
then
1800 something, and they moved the road around or whatever. But when it was broke out and sold, it had to meet existing codes or zoning. So we had to give it a variance for a setback. I don't remember how much it was. It wasn't a lot,
10 feet.
10 feet maybe or
Something like
whatever.
that. But
Right.
that's another one of the complications. You know,
Right.
You put the mortgage companies in there, it says beat all the code.
Right.
They were right to, they asked that of the applicant.
Right. Yeah, we do that with like the pools. They got a bathhouse. They built in the corner by the chain link fence. They go to sell the house. The bathhouse doesn't meet the setbacks. They didn't have a variance, so they come in front of the board. Okay, if it is a private road or a flag lot of 50 feet, then they wouldn't need those. Then they wouldn't need those. And it just seems, it's hard for me to grasp making a flag lot 66 and I can put a private road in at 50 feet and put 4 houses on it. And we really, this town is unique to talk about Wheatland. Yeah, they have a couple of spots, but this town's unique. They don't call it the Rush Alps for nothing, okay? But we have a lot of terrain, we have valleys, we have hills and stuff. You know, look at Stony Brook. Okay, there's a lot of land there. Well, Stony Brook is one that, I don't know how long that driveway is. That
Phelps Road,
Huh?
Phelps Road on the backside.
Phelps Road backside, there's 4 houses up there at the bottom. When you come around the curve there, up on top, there's 4 houses there.
Sean, do you
Yeah.
have a question?
Well, I kind of did. I was thinking about the 500 feet, because let's say there's a flag lot and I'm a landowner or a resident, I've got 20 acres and I want to put a flag lot connection, and then they say no, because I'm only 300 feet. My question is, could you defend that in court? If you, if I take you to town to court, could that be defended at 500 feet? Or would you lose if I meet all other requirements for road entrance, some utilities, I mean, everything you can meet, other than that 500 feet? Am I gonna win that case or lose that case?
So obviously, first you apply for the variance, you come to the
Yep,
zoning
I
board.
come and do all my paperwork, I get everything done, and I get kicked out because I didn't get my permission.
The court's going to look at whether or not the zoning board applied the 5 factors it has before them
Yep,
as
Correct.
to whether or not it made the right
Yep.
decision. So if the zoning board says, for instance, the zoning board says, well, we think that the 300 feet is a substantial variance, and we think that it does affect the character and welfare of the neighborhood, and therefore, and they go through the 5 factors and they say, so therefore we deny your variance application,
Mhm.
that's when you'd be defending it in court.
yeah,
And I would.
and I got the defense because there's driveways all over town that I can bring into an example to say, hey,
The other thing,
They're here.
I want to put a flag lot next to his property. My flag lot is right on my property line and his property line, okay? We're within 500 feet.
Right.
I mean, to me, that kind of makes for a lot of problems.
Well, it's gonna
Doesn't
be
make
right off the
sense.
bat, right? It's gonna be a substantial.
Right,
It's gonna be
yeah, say,
substantial.
wait a minute.
Well, I
you
think
know.
that
Yeah, that's why I
Scott said we
wanted-
could
it's gonna
talk
be
about like
substantial.
numbers and
Probably.
stuff, though, you know, so obviously, there's a need for something, because we can't even kind of talk about this, there's sort of nothing
Well, the only
in
reason,
the local
not to
law now.
interrupt you, the only reason I brought this up before and said maybe we ought to reconsider something is because of the 50-foot for a private road, okay? And we were given variances. I can only speak for myself, but we looked at the pole, we looked at how, whatever it was, okay? Size of the lot, you know, and how the configuration was before. I could either say yay or nay, all right? And like I said, the only reason a farmer wanted to cut out and had a 50-foot, he had to come for a variance, but planning board didn't require it to come for a variance. It's like I say, a lot of these things that were broke up never got variances.
I mean, clearly though, there's a need for something, because all of these things that are out there that we're kind of like, well, we don't know how this happened. We don't know how that happened. Well, this one doesn't apply. Only 5% are approved. So,
No,
we-
they're not, well,
so 5% and not even 12 are approved.
but out of 80, only 12 of them had variances.
So I think
Okay.
that clearly then there's a need for something
So is
that,
is
you know,
that your comment?
sort of
There
written.
there are 80 flag lots in Rush and 12 had variances?
Correct. Did
So
I
there's not,
find?
there's not 12 that have houses. There's a lot more that have houses.
I think most of them do, of those 12 do. But anyways, the whole point is that why don't we just call a flag lot 50-foot like a private road? Okay, and it has to meet all other criteria. It's gotta meet square footage, you know, there's still a setback thing, not the width of the setback.
Yeah, but don't you want 60 feet so you can put a public road in?
Well, you take Richland over here, you asked Bruce for 50 and Bruce said no.
Right.
Bruce already controls 60 feet with his 50, okay, makes it 110-foot width that he has there. Because he has a easement right of way from National
Oh,
Grid
okay.
or
For the
Niagara
peanut
Mohawk,
trail?
which you didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry, well, I was sitting in that meeting, I was wondering why he didn't have an easement. with the National
they already
Grid.
have one, okay? So theoretically speaking, he could put a 60-foot road in there. Okay?
Okay.
Because he has it. The other thing with that,
Well, but
I-
that should have come up.
Kind of weird.
I mean,
we knew it.
That
Was
is
it a
okay,
secret?
The other point is,
was that in
The other-
anything you said when you were? when
the
you
other
approved
point,
it?
the other point is that one, they'll never build there. 80% of that is federal wetlands,
Yeah, I
okay?
understand. That's what I
And-
figured. that
And
it's-
you'd
it's
have to
too
have your
valuable for
finished
development.
floor, your basement floor, 8 feet above existing grade now, okay? I mean, that's all part of that.
It just tiled the whole thing too,
Huh?
right? It just tiled the whole thing. didn't it?
Yeah.
That doesn't.
But that doesn't mean anything when
But
it
still,
comes to
it's-
that, okay? But yeah, I mean, so that property will never, ever see a building on it, okay? So there really was no need for that additional. Not only that, then you'd have to put another variance with the house,
That type of situation sounds like a very valid reason to get a variance.
you know, right?
So I'm just wondering if we can sort of look at this and say, okay, do we agree that there needs to be something more descriptive in our town code and that there needs to be a change? Or do we think it's fine the way it is and we want to leave it? Or do we think as a group, like, okay, you want to know what, we do need a change. We're not sure that exactly what you have here is perfect.
I'm not
There's some
either.
things, right, there's some things that we want to maybe change or talk about or discuss.
Let me say this, as long as I've been involved in town government, the flag lot has been a contentious issue. Every time one comes up, it's a heartache for the planning board, it's a heartache for the zoning board. So is there something we could do better? I certainly think so. But it's just,
Matter.
I'm troubled by two things. Number one is what Lee says, you know, the kind of contradiction of the 50-foot for a 4-person private road versus the 66. I know that's a problem. The second thing is what in the current proposal is already contradictory to town law, the existing town law.
New York State town law or town code?
Rush town
Rush
code.
town code.
Have you done a complete review on that? Or
No, I mean, this is still the workshop phase, not even the town board.
I'm just saying, there might be a lot of things here that
Yeah. I mean,
we don't
this-
even need to consider because they're, you know, we're button heads with something
And-
that's already
and
there.
If the town board wants David and I to, if they would like us to, you know, go after this and put our hands together, come up with a proposal of some sort, we can certainly do that. And obviously, we can use some of what Scott has already done, the hard work Scott has put, but we haven't, and I have, besides listening to these two presentations, I haven't gone through and double checked how this affects other portions of the town code. Because once you, as you all know, once you change one thing in the town code, you have to make sure that everything else is a domino effect. And the town boards.
Yeah, I mean, I
Very
tried,
aware of that
I
as well.
tried to handle that from what I knew about the town
Well,
code,
like
but doesn't mean
driveway-
I'm perfect.
Like
And
driveway
remember,
code, private road codes for driveways and stuff, that's all part of town code.
and I refer to those.
Right. The underground, all the utilities, that's part of code.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember my original proposal stated 50 feet for private, for less than 10 acres or less. Remember that, thinking that you couldn't divide that into more than 4 lots practically anyway. And 60 feet for more than 10 acres, right? So that kind of is more in line with what you're suggesting. The 66 feet was suggested by our town engineer as kind of a standard road width, and I think Carl understands that better than I do.
I know where it originated. Yeah, we could, I mean, that's something that I think 60 feet it could be reduced to 60 feet if that's.
Yeah, 60 gets you a public road. 50 feet ends up being the minimum front lot width. So you couldn't have a private house, single residence without having 50 feet.
Right.
You could have a private road as little as 40.
I mean, my impression is that 60 feet would meet, I'm gonna call it fire department access, all the, correct or not?
Oh, yeah, I'm driving a little
Yeah.
cross section of
Yeah.
what the road would look like, how much.
I mean, you know, which is probably one of the most important things that I can think of
60 feet is in the design specifications for public roads.
for a public road. And I'm not sure
For
why. it needs to be
residential and
66
and
versus
commercial.
60.
Right. The reason,
It ought to be 60.
the reason that state went 66 was 6 foot was for additional utilities. Okay, and the other reason they like 66 feet is because the road's never in the middle of the right of way.
But it actually goes back to state turnpikes
Right,
in the history, because it was a 4-rod road
right.
based on old survey monumentation. So it's, yeah, I mean, but yeah, they've now got their design standards to fit that 66 feet.
Right, and that's, yeah, they went back and forth 40, 50, and we were back, well, the road's over here, now we're going back and getting more easements right away, so they just said 66 feet.
So we all kind of agree, I think, that there needs to be some sort of change. You know, or at least if the majority of us may, maybe speaking for all of you, you're like, no, or we don't agree. But the other piece is, maybe the next part that we can look at is the planning board. So having them be able to approve like that initial. And we were saying, I know like these kind of scenarios that we can always come up with scenarios of how it would create more kind of paperwork for people, but those are hopefully the odd few. Would this be
The difference, and
helpful?
correct me, because I'm not sure about the planning board, the difference between the zoning board and the planning board is when they, let's say, we'll just say how many driveway entrances to a road. When the zoning board looks at something, we have 5 things of the criteria we look at. We have 5 things. I have not heard, or I don't see where the planning board has 5 things to look at.
No, it's not that detailed.
Correct.
Essentially, there's a code that gives us either rules or authority,
Right,
right?
right.
And which we can't,
They follow the rules, we can bend them, but.
that's basically true.
Okay, but yeah, but like I said, when it comes in front of us, we have 5 things in which to look at. Break it down that way, okay? The only thing I'm concerned is that everybody on the zoning or on the planning board now is, reasonable and whatever, but if you get somebody that's unreasonable or whatever, they don't have that criteria to look at and say, this is why we're doing that, okay?
But is
That's the
this,
only concern that I have.
so I guess
Yeah.
I'm just confused because I
I
don't
know.
know. It seems like this is less restrictive, but we're kind of making it like it's more restrictive. So you guys would be able to sort of
Yeah,
do that initial.
it gives a
Okay.
niche of a single flag lot per subdivision under certain considerations, like the flag has to be so wide, or the pole has to be so wide, it has to be so far from another pole. It has to be more than, is it 200 feet and less than 1,000 feet. So within those guidelines, the planning board could approve them. And that would have applied to probably 2 out of the 3 that we handled last year. Or if it doesn't, we could approve it with a contingency that, if you change the flag from this to this, then we'll approve it, or you have to go to the zoning board and take another month or 2.
But the only difference is before they came, we either said yay or nay. There would be those other conditions. Right now, the only reason it comes to us is because we don't meet the 150 at the setback.
So, but if it goes to the planning board first, there's one that might be approved that wouldn't have to come to us at all, right? If it met those conditions, then it
Yeah,
doesn't
if it,
even.
if it doesn't meet the width, that minimum setback, we can't approve it anyway. So it has to come to you.
Right.
It doesn't matter what all the other conditions are.
But right now, if it's a minimum square footage, meets the septic, meets the water, meets everything on the subdivision, can you approve it?
Yes, if
Right
it
now.
meets all the code
Right.
requirements.
The only reason it comes to us is because it doesn't meet the 150
Right.
at the setback. What he's saying is, I understand that, let's change the width or do whatever. But now it becomes, they're only gonna allow 1. They're only in a certain distance and stuff like that. So you take Pinnacle Road, say there was 1 of them, we would have had 4 more in front of us. Simple as that, okay?
You'd have had all those in front of you anyway.
If it was 50 feet,
Mhm.
the flag lots were allowed and it said 50 feet, there would have been none of them in front of us. Even if the flag lot says 50 feet, or say if you got your 66 and they had 66, they wouldn't come to us for a variance. But because of the size of it or whatever, and because they were next to each other, they would have been in front of us.
They'll need more variances, is what you're saying.
Over there, we'd have had 4. Well, if everybody met the 66 feet, we would have had 4 variances in front of us
For each condition that they did.
for each condition they didn't meet. Okay. Because each one of them would have needed a variance because they were within the 500 feet. Okay.
Okay, but they would have had to be in front of the planning board regardless.
No, right. Everybody has to go to the planning board. I
I
understand.
mean, the
And they
zoning
already
board,
were.
they would have had to be, they would have had to come to the zoning board regardless.
So that's what I'm
If-
confused about. So
if
if they
it-
would have had to come to the zoning board regardless, then what does this kind of,
If
what is
our,
the benefit?
if our zoning law for a flag lot said 50 feet, they would not have to have come in front of us.
Because then that was the only variance that you were granting.
Correct.
And you changed it to allow that.
As the law is right now, as our codes read right now, the way I take it is, if our code said that flag lots could be 50 feet at the setback, there would have been no variances.
Yeah, it's
Right.
not, it's the building department's call to make that call, but
no,
yes, I agree with you.
Right,
Well,
Yeah,
then,
okay.
I think that makes all the more reason that we probably need something, even if we're gonna lower that, because, I mean, I don't know, if we want more and more and more flag lots.
So could I'd like to rephrase this, and that is, if you as a planning board go back and look at how the structure of the document can give you more latitude to get the things done that need to get done. That if, as opposed to setting up small things that end up having to come to the zoning board of appeals, that the document, which I thought the document was good. I mean, I looked at the document in relationship to some other documents. But if you can just look at it and say, okay, what will give us the latitude to get some things done that we might not have, and then have it proposed as law, and so that it gets it done. And I may be off base there, but I'm thinking that
Yeah, I mean,
if we cut down the bureaucracy, I think that it makes it possible for the government of Brush to be looked at in a positive way, and also looked at as being effective and efficient, and not wasting people's time.
there were 2 simultaneous goals. One was to allow the planning board, for the benefit of the applicants, to approve a
Right.
a significant subset of flag lots that come before us, right, without involving the zoning board. But there was also a goal of eliminating some of what I believe are excesses, where you have multiple flag lot poles next to each other, 3 driveways next to each other, having accessory buildings in front of a main residence behind you, that type of thing. So
And
there-
and I don't disagree at all with that. In fact, I would think that if there were 3 access roads right next to each other and they came to the zoning board of appeals, in all probability, it would be turned down by this, I'm making a comment here.
No.
It would probably be turned- In my opinion, I would not vote for that as a zoning board of appeals member. That makes sense. I'm looking at the first part of what you said, which was the other goal, that the first goal, which was to really put the document and the law in the hands of the planning board to most effectively get things done for the residents of the town of Rock. That's all.
Yeah.
And
Without-
I may
Without
not
adding
be
conditions
stating-
and burdens that come back to
Yeah.
the zoning board.
So are there some things that you would kind of look at, consider maybe changing or updating to make that so?
And I can't speak for the.
Yeah,
planning board.
Rick?
No, I can't.
I'm just kidding.
Kind of on the docs, and I've heard everybody talk, so on the docs or the presentation Scott put together, would you guys be willing to, as a group, take a look at that again, make your proposed changes and send it back to us?
I think so,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the PowerPoint was really good, and if you can send us the PowerPoint as well. I mean, I have printed off a number of copies of the original proposal, various point size.
And then at least if we come to a kind of a consensus amongst ourselves of
Yeah,
what
that
we
would be good.
think, you
Well,
can
that
at least
certainly would
consider
be
it,
good.
you know, but we could discuss it at our next meeting. We can look at it separately prior to that. and then
Well, keep
when
in
we
mind, the
meet-
original proposal was 60 feet and 50 feet, right, depending on the back lot
Right.
size, so maybe you like that better. Regarding what makes life simpler and more efficient for applicants, I thought this was it, while still providing a number of safeguards, so the planning board had to adhere to pretty normal conditions, which is typical of the town code, what the planning board is normally allowed to do.
I think it's a great job, and the fact that you kind of dug in and did anything for something that's not been done and been avoided and kind of
If this
swept
was
under the
easy,
rug for
maybe it
so
would have
long,
been done
God bless.
before.
So, yeah. I'm
Maybe,
impressed.
maybe at the same time, as Lori's saying, maybe you as the planning board also look at it again in the light of, okay, let's see if there are some things that would have made this easier. I was gonna ask one really simple question, and it may seem insignificant, but we said that there are not gonna be any structures on the telephone pole.
Right.
Okay, on the access. Are those permanent, or what if I have a lot that has 40 acres in the back and I want to put up a little temporary farm stand there? And I mean, I'm just asking, it's a very simple question, and I would like you to,
You
you
don't
all
want to
want to go
answer.
back.
You don't want to answer that one.
Yeah.
No, I just want
Stay
to,
away from that one.
no, I,
Yeah, I just have a question for Lee. So were you just looking at a map, just seeing where all these, or do you just know off the top of your head?
I have it here.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you want to make it,
I was just wondering, is it just visual on the map or we're using GIS?
these are addresses.
Oh, okay.
These are addresses. So these are the 80.
They're 70.
That was our secret.
I know.
Oh, and there's 2 pages.
Great.
Yeah, I think the other thing we have to look at is, so in the situation of 251, 260-foot access points, how would that be developed? You know, well, what are the options there? Because you either got 2 flag lots with 60-foot access, which would meet this proposed code, or you got private roads to
8 houses.
or you got a public road with a subdivision, so. But more than
Okay,
4.
and if it's a public road, because there is water there, okay, now you got houses behind houses, and they're only one. Stacked right in, I mean, it'd only be 150 feet away from each other.
Farm crest. So, so I guess that's maybe just, I would like to look at that in light of.
But take Biondo and Westcliff or Biondo and Fisher Road, they're back to back. I mean, we don't really have that many subdivisions in town. Okay, and with the terrain and the way things are, typically people don't buy and put a flag lot in on an acre or 2 acres. They're generally 5, bigger than that, or whatever, okay? And they're tucked in there. I mean, they're back in. I've never done a flag lot with only one for the straight driveway. They all want it tucked and turned, and they want to hide behind the honeysuckle and the trees. And most of the time, people that build on a flag lot, not all, but most of the time, they don't want to see the neighbors in front, okay? And I've never really, I'm supposed they do happen or could happen, but neighborhood disputes, you really don't see much, you know? Personally, myself, I'd rather have a driveway next to my house to a flag lot than I would a 60-foot with 20 homes behind me. That's just my opinion.
This doesn't prevent either one, and it doesn't encourage either one.
But it
If they
just,
want to put
but as long as it starts to really give you the latitude to do those approvals, and that's all, just take a look to see what will give you the latitude to make those approvals.
Well-
It's in your authority to do that. I mean, I think
Keep
that's
in
good.
mind, Riga, the example I showed, flag lot approvals are all by the planning board.
Right. I mean, I read that on the New York State educational thing.
If a flag lot can't be 1,000 feet, what are you gonna do about some of these other private homes that are back farther than 1,000 feet and still have the 150 at the front?
Get a variance.
Think about that. We have a lot of houses in town, their driveways are over 1,000 feet long.
Mhm.
They have the 150 at the front, they don't have variances.
Well,
You know?
that's okay. That meets the code. That's gonna meet the code. I understand that.
Right.
You mean this back?
Yeah,
You
So what
can make a
exists?
copy of
I was
it
saying,
if
do you
you
want
want.
to make, do
Yeah.
you want a copy?
Yeah.
You can just- or-
Since he shared the secrets, now you know, now you know what exists.
okay.
All right, so what's
I wouldn't
what's the
mind.
takeaway? Are we gonna get together and discuss
Yeah,
this?
I think, well,
Okay,
this will
copy.
be, I mean, if we wanted to do
Thanks,
it
Amber.
prior to the August meeting, absolutely, we can have a.
Let's
special
do it,
meeting
let's
to
do it at the
discuss.
August meeting, give everybody time to research it, look into things and whatnot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But nothing.
but I love that we got together, I love that you guys came and kind of presented and that we were able to talk about it and look at it.
Yeah, I
and
appreciate
give
that opportunity.
A lot of
And-
credit.
And one of the fears is that we're trying to, we don't want to create the perception that we're trying to undo what you
Right.
guys
No,
are
no.
doing, you know?
No, I knew this
Just because
wouldn't be
when you
easy.
give a variance,
And
it's
to
kind of
be
like,
honest, I put this proposal together. And until I did the PowerPoint, I didn't understand myself why most of the proposals were in there. And it forced me to explain it well enough to explain it to other people, help me explain it to myself. I may not agree with it or not, but I think there's a
I thought-
No, no,
reason
I-
for
I
almost
thought it was a
everything
really
there.
good,
Yeah.
I thought it was a really great presentation.
Thank you.
That was great.
Okay, so we
And
still
you
have
can-
another item.
Oh, okay.
Scott, if you make me the host again, I can
I
share
can,
the.
I can do that. If I close out of this, that probably ends the problem. Did it work?
Yeah, but now I don't have those forms electronically, but everyone has one in front of them,
Yeah, we have
right?
we have a copy.
Okay.
Mhm. Or two.
Yeah, so these were, you guys, thanks for having us. We appreciate it. It's kind of nice
Oh,
that we
we're
work
glad you
together as a
came.
board. I
All
think
right.
sharing that document and doing our changes that work good. We've had some issues in the last, I've been on the board, I think, coming up on 2 years, year and a half so far. We've had issues with informals. I don't know how many informals we get. But when we get an informal, it's kind of, it's all over the place. Some will come in with a map, some will have a good idea what they're doing, some have no idea. So what we tried to do was create a form that made it a little more standard on the information that we were asking for. So we did a two-piece form. The first one you have is, it's kind of this big fold out like this. This is what we call like the summary. Well, it gives us a little scope. It just tells the purpose of the informal review. Then it gives common terms used, general definitions like site plan, subdivision, special permit, guidelines, documents required. That's a big one because we don't always get what we need. We're kind of trying to guide the applicant, but it's very hard if they don't show up with a plan, so to speak. So those are the documents required, and then how to submit. So this is kind of, what I'm going to redo this and put, Carl had suggested this be like a part A piece. And then we actually had the informal discussion application, which is this single piece here. So that kind of just goes back to this where the documents required as owner name, address, telephone number requested interview. Then if you have an agent, so it's agent name, address and telephone number, if applicable, street location, tax map ID, which we don't always get, current zoning of parcel, size of area, site of proposed project, current zoning of adjoining properties, that comes into play quite a bit. And then we ask for 8.5 by 11 or larger maps must be attached. Water, utilities or sewers being proposed and brief description of project. And then on the bottom it says applicant request an informal discussion for, we have subdivision / re-subdivision, site plan, other special permit, area variance, use variance. Then a date and a signature. We tried to make it simple, but we were hoping that between the two boards, we could use the same form. And then if you guys need to make changes on either the summary or the informal discussion that meets your purpose or helps you, by all means, make the changes and send it back. And between us, we should be able to come to a common form we can use. Again, I don't know how many informals you get, but I think we have another one scheduled for our next meeting, don't we? Yeah.
What are most of your informals for?
Probably.
So I can give you some examples. One was the people that own Horse's Friend, that property that's rented out for the horse people. They wanted to build, it was a father and son, and they wanted to build two houses next to each other. Well, they wanted to build one house with like a double, but they wanted the property line to go down the middle of the house. Right, so the son owned his side of the house, the father owned their side of the house. He said, well, you can't do that.
Two
You-
variances.
You can have a double, but you have to have this, 25-foot side setback. So you could have houses within 50 feet. If you dig a tunnel underground, we wouldn't know about it. That'd be okay. But so that was an example. They just were seeing what they could do. So they didn't want an accessory apartment. They didn't want a double owned by just one of them. Right. So I said, you can't do that. You can't have two residences on one property. So that was an example where they had unusual requests and they couldn't fulfill it. This one that's coming up to us now is, I believe it's a woman who wants to put a self-storage facility on a limited industrial property. And you can't, it's commercial. The rush storage that we have now is on a commercial lot next to limited industrial. So the code says you can only have 5% of a limited industrial zoning district that is commercial, right? So I doubt that we can help that person, but we thought we'd explain the law to her, see what might be done. We've had people come about accessory apartments and a number of other things like that. Usually it's weird things. People just don't know the law. They don't know where to find things in the law, and they're just looking for very crude direction.
Yeah, see, when they come to us and ask questions, we say, here, this is the criteria we look at.
Yeah.
This is for an area, this is for use, okay? You have to meet these and
Yeah, ours are much more general and they could be obscure parts of the law that we have to refer to.
Right.
That's the way it is. And the problem we've had is, as Steve suggested, is people would come and they would tell us something without any backup information and maps to look at. And we thought we knew what they were asking for, but it turns out we really didn't. So we were giving them bad information without knowing it because we didn't understand what they were asking for. So this was an attempt to add a little bit of formality to an informal process. I will add one other caution. There is no application fee with this, as some towns do have an application fee for an informal. It might be cheap, it might be $50, but in our case, we can't go about bringing in town engineers and that sort of thing because they need things, they need accounts to charge to. So if we start getting town engineer help for something like this, it gets billed to the town and everybody as taxpayers pays for it.
Yeah, we were kind of hoping this would, we figured part of our service to the town is.
Maybe
Right.
we
Well,
agree
but
with
you all
that.
pretty much know what the engineer is gonna say anyway, so.
And for us, I mean, since we don't really do a lot of this, then the form probably needs to be more of what you need, so this would be fine.
Yeah, because anything usually comes to us, comes from you or the
Yeah.
building department.
And maybe if it is out there, just as an option for people, we just put what we need maybe on this, section A for the
Better
area.
documentation is always good, because that's one of my complaints. They come in and say, oh, we want to put a shed. I said, You have to give me a rough idea where you're gonna put it on
Yeah.
the lot.
I mean, we're sure where the exit is, right?
Yeah.
We've had two proposals this year. The one that came in was 30 pages for
Shed.
for a garage.
I know which one you're talking
Yeah.
about.
And it was, it was like, everything was there.
Yeah.
More than I could imagine, actually.
Yeah.
And it was done really well. You probably would have bet it, you're like, wow, everybody should do it as well. I was just gonna make one comment on wording on this. It says water utilities, and I would have added septic or sewer.
That's sanitary or storm. or combination.
or something. I mean, I just,
Hey, we don't have any sewers in this town.
yeah.
You want that?
Maybe the word sewer should even be in
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah, maybe we could just put like what we require for area and use variance or what we look at as part of like the appendix that you have with yours and then.
And right now, it's pretty important to have the
Yeah.
septic
Liquor, this
system
stuff
cited
is
on the
too,
map too.
Yeah.
If they're gonna do anything, put a shed up or a driveway or anything, so that's pretty important. Or
Yeah.
digging a well. You guys well know.
Yeah, like, I think anything like this helps people be organized for any of the meetings, you know, it just gives people more idea of what they need to be prepared for anything, so. I like it.
I think this is good.
Yay, we agree.
Steve's the guy that drove this one.
I think it's good. I like, I especially like this.
Mhm.
This
Very
is
helpful.
really
Yeah, it was
laid some
meant,
things
yeah,
out.
it was meant to be a summary page, so if you picked it up and looked at it, you get a general idea. If somebody comes in, you say site plan, they might have no clue what you're, until you
Yeah.
actually read what
I
that
think I
says.
could use this the first 5 years on the plan.
But if you guys want to add, as Lori suggested, something for the
Maybe
variance,
I'll
feel
look-
free to
look and see what
squeeze it
we-
in there.
we have and have it on. So, thank you very much.
This is all good.
Yeah, but it would be good to, I think, to describe area variance and use
Yeah,
variance.
it
and-
can't
and the
hurt to
fact
have it on there. I mean,
you Might
yes,
want
they can
something to
find it,
describe
but,
that,
yeah.
what the processes are. I know use variances are a lot tougher than area
Yes.
variances
Yeah.
to get approved.
I don't think it could hurt to have it there, so. um, Is there anything
Well,
else
that's-
for tonight? Because this is going to be like the longest zoning board meeting in history.
Oh, we've gone to midnight. We've gone to midnight.
Not planning.
Ever
No,
since you
actually,
got
it was,
chair,
uh,
I'm
I
telling
know.
you.
Pandemic's fault.
You have no applications on that.
Okay, yeah, so next meeting, we'll probably look at the flag map stuff. So, well, thank you guys again
Yeah,
for
thanks for having
coming.
us.
Um,
Thank you.
And
And
thanks to my
Shelley,
fellow members for coming.
thank you for everything. We're gonna miss
Appreciate
you. So,
Thank you.
you know, we want you to cry on Zoom, so. no, I'm just kidding. She's just crying because it's late. But thank you for everything, and I think, any other comments before we close? So I make a motion to close the zoning board of appeals meeting. It is 9:01.
Second.
It's not even a meeting. Is it
Member
under-
Anderson,
Aye.
member Prue,
Aye.
member Hart,
Aye.
member Hedrick,
All right.
Chair Guys.
Aye.